Do immigrants, legal or undocumented, take away jobs and drag down wages? This is basically the core of the anti-immigration economic argument. Now, you hear a racial argument from these guys too. We're mostly going to ignore that because you just can't reason with racism, but economics are about numbers and numbers we can do. So, have undocumented immigrants negatively affected jobs or wages for native-born Americans here in North Carolina? To answer this question, the first thing you gotta know is how many undocumented immigrants are there in North Carolina. By definition, no one has the exact number, but we do have some pretty good estimates. There are probably around 450,000 undocumented immigrants living in North Carolina today. Some anti-immigrant groups say there could be as many as 680,000, and their methodology is probably wrong, but that gives you an idea of the kind of scale we're talking about in a state of 11 million people. So depending on whose numbers you go with, that gives you between 3 and 6% of the whole state's population, or between 5 and 9% of the whole state's workforce of 5.1 million. Next question, are undocumented immigrants pushing native-born Americans out of the workforce and taking their jobs? Now, if this were happening, we would expect it to show up in the labor force participation rate. That's the share of the number of people in their prime working years who are looking for work or in the workforce already. But it turns out that North Carolina's prime age labor force participation rate is very steady. It basically hasn't changed in 20 years. I'm still not sold though. Let's go look at the unemployment numbers. North Carolina's unemployment rate right now is right around 3.7%. It's close to a 20-year low. And that's not just North Carolina. That's a trend happening all around the country. If undocumented workers were taking people's jobs, we'd expect to see higher unemployment and lower labor force participation, and we just don't see that in the data. In fact, one of North Carolina's big problems right now is not too many workers, it's a labor shortage. Okay, but what about wages? The other part of the argument here is that undocumented immigrants have dragged down wages for native-born Americans. But again, we don't see any evidence of this happening in the data. Here's a look at the average hourly earnings for all workers in North Carolina since 2004. The direction is pretty clear. In fact, even if you drill down and look specifically at an industry that relies heavily on immigrant labor like construction, you see no sign that wages have gone down. In fact, wages rose even more rapidly from 2021 to 2024. And this pretty much reflects what all the economic research says too. Moderate immigration, legal or otherwise, tends to increase economic growth, it produces jobs, and it raises wages for native-born Americans because it grows the economy overall, and that is good for everybody. There's just no really good economic argument for severely restricting immigration. But if your goal is actually to divide people and scare them and scapegoat people with brown skin, then you might tell a story about how outsiders are coming to steal their jobs. It's a total lie with no evidence behind it, but it's a tried and true way to manipulate people.